Hello and welcome to What the F*** Just Happened Today, your essential guide to the daily shock and awe in national politics. I'm Joe Amditis. Let's get to it. It's Monday, June 6th, 2022. Welcome to day 503. Biden invoked the Defense Production Act to boost the domestic production of solar panels and their parts in an effort to shift the country toward clean energy. He also declared a 24-month tariff exemption for solar panels from 4 Southeast Asian nations after an investigation froze the imports. The Commerce Department's inquiry into possible trade violations involving Chinese solar panel and solar cell makers had cut solar installation forecasts by nearly 50%. In 2020, 89% of the solar panels used in the United States were imported. Biden's press secretary said Biden invoked the Defense Production Act to, quote, make sure that he's delivering for the American people, end quote. Meanwhile, Biden is expected to decide in July or August whether to partially forgive student loan debt for 40 million borrowers who owe roughly $1.6 trillion. Earlier this year, Biden extended the pandemic-related pause in federal student loan payments through the end of August. Officials say Biden is likely to announce his plans closer to when the pause is scheduled to lapse. Moving on, the United States has wasted 82.1 million COVID-19 vaccine doses, just over 11% of the doses that the federal government distributed. CVS and Walmart were responsible for more than a quarter of the doses that were thrown away. Meanwhile, Mike Pence's chief of staff reportedly warned the Secret Service on January 5, 2021, that Trump was going to publicly turn against the vice president, and that there could be a security risk because of it. It's unclear what that agent Tim Geibels did with Mark Short's message, but the next day, more than 2,000 pro-Trump rioters stormed the Capitol, some chanting, "Hang Mike Pence." Speaking of the insurrection, the Justice Department charged the former top leader of the Proud Boys extremist group, as well as 4 other members, with seditious conspiracy for their role in the January 6th attack. The men were previously charged in a March indictment with conspiring to obstruct the certification of the 2020 presidential election, and the sedition charges now add to the Justice Department's allegation of an organized plot to either use force to overthrow the government or to interfere with the execution of federal law. The DOJ previously charged 11 members of the Oath Keepers extremist group and their leader, Stuart Rhodes, in January 2022 with similar seditious conspiracy charges. And finally, the Justice Department declined to prosecute former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows and Communications Chief Daniel Scavino, despite being referred for contempt for failing to cooperate with the January 6th committee. Former Trump White House advisor Peter Navarro, however, was indicted by a grand jury on 2 counts of criminal contempt of Congress for his refusal to comply with a subpoena from the committee. Navarro is now the 2nd Trump advisor who's facing criminal charges. Steve Bannon was indicted on a contempt of Congress charge in November after he refused the committee's requests. One more story to watch before we go to the polls. The House Select Committee is investigating the January 6th insurrection at the Capitol and will host its first televised hearing this Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. After more than 100 subpoenas, 1,000 interviews, and 100,000 documents, the committee says it plans to present evidence from its 10-month investigation, which show a deliberate, coordinated effort by Trump and his associates to delay certification of Biden's 2020 presidential election win, and how that led to the violence at the Capitol. At least 6 hearings are planned, with 2 of them set for prime time. And in the polls, the Washington Post says 45% of Americans say Trump is solely or mainly responsible for the riot at the Capitol on January 6th. 55% say Trump is only somewhat or not really responsible. The Wall Street Journal says 83% of Americans described the state of the U.S. economy as poor or not so good. 35% say they aren't satisfied at all with their financial situation. ABC News says 37% of Americans approve of Biden's handling of the economy. 80% say that inflation is also an important factor in how they will vote this November. And finally, Newsweek says 44% of Republican respondents said deadly mass shootings in the United States are something that must be accepted as part of a free society. 85% of Democrats and 73% of independents, meanwhile, said mass shootings are, quote, something we can prevent and stop if we really tried, end quote. That's all for now. You can find the links and sources for all of these stories on the main website. And as always, visit whatthefjusthappenedtoday.com for the latest news and headlines. Until next time, I'm Joe Amditis.